Hi, everyone, and welcome. We know you're here because you're gearing up for a work opportunity in Japan. And let's face it, you want the good stuff, the real deal.
Absolutely. And today's deep dive is all about getting you past those typical tourist tips and diving deep into what it's really like to work in Japan.
Exactly. We've got our hands on an insider's perspective, someone who interned in Tokyo, right in the heart of it all.
A first-hand account like this is really valuable, especially because it challenges some common stereotypes about working in Japan.
So let's jump right in. The stereotype, of course, is that Japanese work culture is very, well, traditional, very formal.
Right, and that's definitely true for a lot of the bigger corporations there. But what's so interesting about this intern's experience is that they were at a Tokyo startup.
Oh, interesting. So a little less traditional then.
Yeah. They actually found it surprisingly flexible, collaborative, which is something to keep in mind for sure.
Absolutely. So even though you have that traditional base, it sounds like things are shifting, at least in some sectors. And this intern experience gives us a glimpse into that. I mean, they talked about getting real responsibility right away, even as interns.
And, that actually ties into the Japanese work ethic in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Yeah, long hours are definitely a thing there. But the intern emphasized it's not about just working yourself to the bone. It's about resilience, seeing a project through. And those are valuable skills anywhere.
For sure. That dedication is always impressive. On a lighter note, one thing that really stuck with me was the intern mentioning how much Pokemon they saw everywhere. Haha.
I love that. It's those little details that remind you how Japan balances its modern, fast-paced culture with those deep-rooted traditions. You have cutting-edge technology right alongside these childhood icons. That blend is what makes Japan so unique.
And speaking of that blend, I really want to hear more about Tokyo. This intern's descriptions of the city were so vivid.
Yeah, what's fascinating is how Tokyo manages to be both chaotic and peaceful at the same time.
I've heard that.
Like the intern talked about the Shibuya crossing, that crazy intersection with thousands of people crossing at once.
Oh, yeah.
They said it was totally overwhelming at first, but then it became this symbol of Tokyo's energy for them.
Yeah, it's like the city that never sleeps, but then there's this whole other side.
Exactly. Like the intern found these pockets of peace in Tokyo's parks and shrines.
I can see that.
They mentioned Meiji Jingu Shrine specifically, said it was a nice escape right in the middle of the city.
Yeah, I can see needing that balance in a city like that. And, we can't talk about Japan without mentioning the food. The intern said it was an experience in itself and not just the sushi.
Oh, for sure. Food is so tied to the culture there.
You can say that again.
Like the intern told this story about using their chopsticks wrong at a dinner, like a business dinner, and it was just a little mistake, but it made them realize how important the etiquette is there.
Wow. So even just using chopsticks is a learning curve. It sounds like every experience there has these layers to it.
Absolutely. And that's what makes working in Japan so unique. It's not just about the job, it's this whole cultural immersion.
This internship sounds like it wasn't just about adding bullet points to a resume, right? Like this intern really went through some personal growth too.
100%, yeah. They actually talked about learning to be comfortable with, well, ambiguity, especially when it came to communication.
Oh, interesting. How so?
So they gave this example of a team meeting where their supervisor gave feedback on a project, but it was very indirect. And at first, they were kind of thrown off, like, what does that even mean?
I can imagine, yeah.
But then they realized that direct criticism, even if it's meant to be helpful, it can be perceived as harsh in Japanese culture.
So there's an art to it.
Yeah, reading between the lines is a skill in itself.
Definitely sounds like adaptability is key when it comes to working in Japan.
Totally. The intern's biggest takeaway, they said, was learning to be flexible, open to new ways of doing things.
Makes sense.
And they also highlighted how important it is to just ask if you're unsure about something. Don't be afraid to seek clarification.
That's huge, and honestly, good advice no matter where you're working. Well, I feel like this deep dive has given us so much to think about. The work ethic, the cultural nuances, working in Japan is truly one of a kind.
It really is. And for anyone listening who's thinking, this is for me, the intern actually mentioned some fantastic resources for people interested in tech careers in Japan. We'll be sure to link those in the show notes.
Perfect. We hope you found this deep dive helpful and maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, happy exploring.